Hi, my name is Margaret and welcome to my artsy corner of the internet. So today I'm basically going to tell you everything I could think of about what you need to know for college dance auditions. Yikes. So I'm sure I'm missing something, but this is what I thought of to tell you about the auditions to try to give you a little bit of help. So in my personal experience with college, I found that I probably had to know where I wanted to audition by the beginning of October. I know it sounds very early. At my high school, almost everybody applied at the early action, early decision deadline, which meant November 1st. At least I think it was November 1st. Also, it's good to know that there are lots of college dance auditions in the fall, and then a couple in January and February. However, I think the first one that I went to was October 13th. So I'm going to be talking about this as if you're applying at the November 1 date, because that's what I think is probably best for dancers so that you can get going with the audition process. And that was what worked for me. So that's how I'm going to kind of be approaching this. But I would recommend knowing where you want to audition by October. And throughout the rest of the college audition process, you can change that. However, you do have to sign up for auditions ahead of time. So I would say have a pretty set list on where you think around the early October. I should also mention that I did have a list at the beginning of October, and then after that first audition, I changed everything and freaked out because I realized that I knew nothing and I wanted to change where I was looking at going. So I had like a major freak out and redid everything by like mid-November. So going along with that same topic, I would recommend auditioning for your number one school, either first or second, which might sound really scary, but I would highly recommend auditioning sooner. Going to the first audition that your number one school is holding can honestly show them that you're really interested and you really want to go to this school. They also probably have more slots open on the first audition, so just subconsciously they know that they still need 20 people for the next class, compared to if you audition in maybe February when they already have half of the class committed to coming. They might know that. So instead of auditioning for 20 spots, you're auditioning for 10 spots now, even if it is just subconsciously. The other thing to remember is that yes, maybe from November to January, you might improve in dance, but you're not going to improve so much that you're going to really sway their idea too much. I don't say that because I don't believe you guys are going to improve. I just mean that in college auditions, they're really looking for students. They're not looking for professional dancers who are already amazing. They're looking for people that they think would be compatible with the program and who they want to work with and teach. So you don't have to be perfect in the audition. You just have to show them that you're willing to learn and that you'll be a good fit and a good student for the program. And so knowing that potential that they see in you from November to January probably isn't going to shift dramatically. I would say if you want to do maybe like your backup school or like a community college first, just to get a feel for what the audition is if you haven't auditioned ever or in a very long time, I would recommend that. I went to my number one first and I almost applied early decision, which means that you have to go to that school if they accept you. So I went to my number one school, the school I was dreaming of going to, and I hated it. And that's what caused me to rethink and completely reevaluate every other college I went and auditioned to after that. So in case that happens to you, go to your number one first and see if you still love it. And then also you can compare every audition afterwards to your number one. Because maybe you go to another school that you weren't that interested in. Maybe it was like number 6 on your list, but then maybe it beats out number one. Whereas if you audition for your number one later in the lineup of auditions, you might kind of just be like, oh, but this isn't my number one. This isn't my number one. And then if you go to your number one after you've auditioned for 5 other schools and it's not as perfect as you think it is, which it's not going to be, then you might have subconsciously or unconsciously not given your all to the other schools because you were waiting for that perfect school. Finally, the last reason why I would recommend going to your number one first is because sometimes some colleges offer re-auditions. I don't know why I did this. Some colleges offer re-auditions. For example, my number one, I did not get to the end of the audition, but they did have a policy where if you didn't make it through the audition or you didn't get accepted, you could come back at a later date for another audition and audition twice for the same school. So if you go, it's still your dream school, but you don't make it, you can come back and re-audition for the same school like a month later. Not every school does this. I think it's actually the minority of schools that do this, but if your number one school does have that option, you might want to go sooner so that if you have to re-audition, you can. My fourth tip is to choreograph your audition solo the summer before. The audition solo honestly was something that just stressed me out my senior year because I didn't start choreographing it until the fall, which means I had to choreograph it in like a month and a half, and I was choreographing it myself, and it was really stressful. I had no studio time. There were all these different parameters for different schools that I had to do, and that was on top of my normal classes, my AP classes, the Common App, the dance applications, going around to auditions, booking the plane tickets to go to auditions, my normal dance schedule that I usually had to do. And honestly, the solo just was one more thing that was like, I'm so stressed out. But you want the solo to be really good. So I'd recommend getting it out of the way the summer before your senior year. That way you have it, you have plenty of time to practice and feel really good with it. And then you don't have to think about it besides rehearsing it maybe every other day, just like marking it through or however long you want to practice before the audition. That way, when you go to the audition solo is not something that is like looming over you and really stressing you out. My next tip is to read through all of the audition requirements. Please. It's super stressful. All of the audition requirements are like these super long web pages or super long emails, but read through them. So when you sign up for an audition, sometimes they'll send you an email with all of the requirements for the audition, basically what resume they want, what size headshot they want, what solo, what form the solo music has to come in, if they want a video, what to wear, where to go, what time to show up, yada, yada, yada. As soon as you get that email and you have some free time, I'd recommend just sitting down, taking the time to thoroughly read through it and take notes. If you have a college application notebook that you're making, which I highly recommend that you do, I would just take a page and write out like, what's a college? Loyola Marymount audition. And then write down everything that you need to bring, what date it is, what time you have to show up, your plane tickets, all of this kind of stuff on one page, so that way you basically have a checklist of everything you have to bring and everything you have to have and everything you're going to be performing and the layout of the audition and all of that. If it's just on their webpage, then as soon as you know that you want to audition for that school, go and read all of the requirements. That way, if they're like, oh, actually in addition to your solo, we also want you to submit like an introduction video or something, then you can write that down and then you know that you have to do that. So just really read it all the way through, because every college has different requirements, and this one wants a headshot that's this big, and this one wants one that's this big, and this one wants your school resume and your dance resume, and this one just wants your dance resume, and it is mind-boggling. So just sit down, take out the time and write out everything that you're going to need for each audition. That way you have a succinct set of notes and it doesn't get too crazy when you're already stressed out about just auditioning. You should also check early in the fall if your college has a pre-screening. That's what they call it, a pre-screening round, which basically means you send in videos. USC Kaufman had one of these where I had to send in 2 solo videos and like an introduction talking video, and it was so stressful. And you had to throw it into like an online portal, and then in like January they would respond to you and say, oh, congratulations, you made it through the pre-screening round. Now you can come in for a real audition. Check to make sure that your school either does or doesn't have pre-screening, because you might go on and try to sign up for an audition and realize that you can't until they accept your pre-screening, and the next thing you know, you're scrambling to choreograph 2 solos, and that was me. That's what I did. So don't do what I did. Do what I'm telling you to do, which is check if there's a pre-screening element.
Okay, so I can't believe that I forgot to talk about this, because it was basically like the reason why I wanted to make this entire series in the first place. But there are these things where they're basically group auditions where a bunch of different dance schools, we're talking like 50 different dance schools, all come to one audition. So you as a dancer go and take one audition class, but there are people from like 50 different colleges there watching people. And a lot of performing arts high schools go to these things. That's how they know about them. Some of them you have to like be invited, and they're kind of weird. But if you can get into one of those group auditions, go look for them, go to them, because they are so helpful, because then you're not running around to like 30 different states trying to audition. And I just think that is important for non-performing arts school kids to know that those things do exist.
One kind of random tip that I thought of is do not do a scheduled tour on the same day as your dance audition. I would highly recommend touring the college and getting a feel for the campus because if you're gonna fly out to an audition, you might as well take advantage and get to know the campus as well. However, scheduled tours are not always on schedule. So you don't want to book an early morning tour and then be walking around campus all day and then realize, oh, the audition starts in like 30 minutes and you're across campus and the tour is going long. Similarly, if there's a tour afterward, you don't want to be stressed out at the end of your dance audition that you're going to miss the scheduled tour. Honestly, the audition day is going to be stressful enough. You don't need all those scheduling conflicts. I would personally just recommend walking around the campus and getting a feel for it and maybe going into a couple buildings and checking it out instead of going with one of the official tour groups. My second tip for the audition day is to bring like a manila folder with you. Basically in here you would have your resume, your headshot, any paperwork they needed, maybe like a CD with your music or a flash drive with your music. Maybe put that in like a Ziploc bag and like staple it to the folder or something, just so it doesn't like slide out. And then like label the front of the folder with like this college audition and like put like the name of the college audition. So kind of how I told you before, like take notes before you even like get on the plane or get in the car to go to the audition. Just put everything that you know that you need in the folder, and then I usually put 2 copies of everything in there just in case like one fell out randomly. And then that way you just have that folder. You take the folder up when you have to check in for the audition and everything is right there. I also sometimes just threw in like extra stuff. Like if they didn't say that they wanted a resume, I just slipped the resume in there anyway. Or if they didn't need any like medical note, but I had a medical note anyway, I put it in there just in case. I also always had a CD and a flash drive with my solo music on it, just in case. And I also always uploaded my solo to YouTube and then had a link that I could also give them. You can actually go watch that solo, I think. I think it's still up. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. Basically, just be over-prepared with all your paperwork, because nothing would be worse than flying across the country for an audition and then realizing that you don't have this specific piece of paperwork that you need, and then realizing that your hotel doesn't have a printer, and the next thing you know, you can't audition, and it's crazy. Honestly, some colleges are pretty good about being like, oh, that's okay, just send us the link to your solo whenever, or send us this paperwork once you get home. But I'm not gonna say that you would be completely safe of it not affecting your application. If you seem like somebody who's really unprepared, that's not a great face to put forward to the place that you're auditioning to, so I would just say be over-prepared. Even some colleges also do ask you to email all of the material to them instead of bringing it with you in paper form. Even the college that asked me just to email everything to them, I still brought paper copies of everything, just in case. Be over-prepared.
So this video was getting a little long, so I decided to break it up into a part 1 and part 2. So be on the lookout for part 2, where I talk about tips and tricks for the actual audition. Thanks for watching, guys.